Ismail. Salim, welcome to Fortune's Growth Summit.
Thanks, Brent. Really appreciate it. All right. Good morning. It's a real thrill to be here. I've gone through all of the loops and ups and downs that many of you have in your careers, building your businesses. And you're always kind of two steps away from total chaos, and managing all of that is something. This is why I'm bold, I think, after that many companies. It kind of really gets it to you. I'm going to run through this, and I want to leave some time for some discussion. Vern gave you my background. That's my White House uniform there. This is a little bit more the Silicon Valley outfit here. I've been spending the last 6 years building out Singularity University. Before that, as Vern mentioned, I was the head of innovation at Yahoo, trying to deal with disruptive innovation in a big company. And I've found if you try to do anything disruptive in a big company, that the immune system of the company will come and attack you, right? And I see some nods from people who've got arrows in their backs from those types of experiences. And so this is kind of an interesting time, because now the world today is being driven by disruptive innovation. And so I want to give you some sense of what we're seeing there and what that looks like. How many of you have some familiarity with Singularity University? Can I just see a show of hands? Okay, a few of you, and if some of you heard Peter Diamandis talk a couple of years ago here, we were based at NASA in Silicon Valley. There are 10 NASA centers around the country, and in Silicon Valley is where they do all of the R&D and supercomputing for all of NASA. We got initial funding from Google, Cisco, Nokia, Autodesk to get started, and we focus on very fast-moving technologies, and we live off this particular curve. That's actually a logarithmic y-axis, and this is essentially Moore's law, the idea that we double the price performance of computation every 18 months or so. Many of you are familiar with this concept. Ray Kurzweil, one of our main founders, put this chart together, and he found we've been steadily doubling the price performance of computation for over 100 years. It goes all the way back to 1900. And what surprised him when he saw this chart was, why is it so smooth and so predictable? We've had wars and recessions and ups and downs in the semiconductor industry. That chart is moving like clockwork, right? It doesn't make sense. It should look more like a stock market, kind of jagged up and down curve. And he spent about a decade doing research on this, trying to understand why it was so predictable and why it was so steady. And he came up with a very fundamental observation that now drives and underpins most of our thinking, which is once you take a domain or a discipline or a technology or an industry area and you power it with information flows, and you power it with information technology, its price performance starts doubling every year or so. And more importantly, once that doubling pattern starts, it stays on that path. Nothing shakes it off that path, right? And the upward limitations of that start getting fairly mind-boggling. How many of you read Peter's book, Abundance? Can I just see a show of hands? So it's really worth reading. Peter projects out if we roll this out 10 years and leverage all these technologies effectively, we could soon have an abundance of energy, clean water, healthcare, education, and what would that look like in the world? These are the technologies that we study, and all of these technologies, from biotech to 3D printing to nanotech to robotics to artificial intelligence, aspects of all of them are now doubling every year or so and are on that same trajectory. Right, and we've brought together at Singularity many of the world's leading experts on these areas, whether it's Vince Cerf, who created the IP address system under the internet, or Craig Venter, who sequenced the first human genome, and all of them are seeing and actually pushing the boundaries of this level of disruption. We challenge our students. Every summer we have a summer program. We bring together 80 students that come from 40 countries. They form teams in one of these areas, and the challenge we give them is come up with an idea that would impact 1 billion people within 10 years, and then launch it. So at the end of the summer, we launch NGOs, for-profit companies, research ideas, each trying to objectively address a major global challenge. This team from a couple of years ago looked at poverty, and they noticed that most of the roads in Africa get washed out during the wet season. 85% of all the roads disappear for several months of the year. And how do you alleviate poverty if you can't move anything around, right? Chris Anderson that summer came into the talk. He's the head of Wired magazine, and you're all familiar with these quadcopter drones that are all the rage now. And they had the idea, why not use drones to deliver medicine and food, especially where there are no roads? And so this is a live test from Haiti where they're delivering medicine to a camp. What's interesting about these drones is all the underlying technologies are moving so fast, whereas today they can carry about a 5-pound package about 8 miles. That's the capacity today. They're doubling in their capability every 9 months. Right? So by the middle of next year, it's 10 pounds. By the end of next year, it's 20 pounds over that same distance. And that scaling keeps going. Right? And so in this case, we're teaching them to spot these doubling patterns, build products and services on top of that, and then your solution scales with the underlying technology. And to give you a sense of how disruptive this can be, we actually had the CEO of the largest tire company in the world come in with the senior management. He said, this is great, but I just don't see how this disrupts my business. I sell 80% of all the truck tires in the world. He said, great, you know, these drones in a couple of years will be picking up 20, 30-pound packages each. And he said, yeah, but I pick up 100-pound pallets when we do these deliveries. And I said, great, so you get 3 drones and they pick up one of these 100-pound pallets. And you could see his mind break right there, right? And you realize, holy geez, this actually could impact my business. And so these weird effects of these technologies going into areas that you would not expect. You would not expect that drones would affect truck tires, right? And yet when you see these orthogonalities, we're seeing that type of thing happen.